Today is a little bit of a different video because I actually have an offline dating expert in as a guest of mine. We're going to go deep into a specific tactic today that's going to help you to learn how to get picked up and approached by a man offline. This is Camille, Virginia, an offline dating expert and a good friend of mine. Camille and I were dating coaches together here in Chicago, and so obviously it was a small dating niche in Chicago, but Camille actually has a lot of techniques that are really interesting that I want to share with you. So Camille, you are a bit of an expert at making men approach you. No?
Yes,
You are.
I would say yes. I don't force them, but yes.
So I brought Camille on because Camille used some really interesting energy tactics, and it helped her to have a pretty extraordinary experience.
Yeah. So I was in New York City. I was walking down Fifth Avenue and I noticed a crowd gathered. And I noticed this really handsome guy following around the star across the street. And he came up and he waved to some of the women that were around me. And so we all kind of waved back. Then eventually he came up to me out of all the women and introduced himself and said, "Hi, I like your energy."
What did the other women think?
They were in shock. We didn't know why he was coming over. I
Right.
was standing there with my laptop, like, what's happening? I mean, one of them was like, "Oh my gosh, you're going out with him." So they were very encouraging. It was great,
Right.
but I'm sure they were wondering why it didn't happen to them. But they just weren't in the same state that I was, which I'll get into later. But I went backstage. I met some of the cast stars. America Ferrera was staring at me, wondering who I was, he said. And it was an amazing experience.
So you went from just like walking randomly down a street in Manhattan to all of a sudden being backstage at a filming of a top TV show surrounded by celebrities and getting picked out of, over a dozen women to be approached.
Yeah,
That's pretty fascinating.
it was pretty cool.
Now, why I actually brought Camille here, because after that happened, Camille actually figured out, how you did that, like what actually happened, and kind of backwards hacked it. And that's what we want to talk about on this channel. I'm really curious, kind of the step that you went through. And what I discovered when I was speaking with Camille is that it's a very common process that I have personally gone through to build confidence and build up energy. So I think that this video is going to be absolutely fantastic. So what was it, Camille, that you discovered afterwards? I know it was like a state that you had gotten into.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just having such a great day. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I was in the big city. I was of New York. I was walking down Fifth Avenue. People say you run into celebrities. I was like, maybe if I get lucky. I had no idea that this was going to happen. So after that whole incredible story, I realized that I was in this state of mind, and it was amazing. I mean, it's a state of mind that I look back, and that's what is helping to attract all these guys to me. And I mean, it's amazing. You feel amazing about yourself. Other people feel that from you. They feel comfortable approaching you. And it's all without saying a word. I hadn't talked to the guy across the street. We couldn't even hear each other. So it's very, very cool state.
Now, one of the coolest parts about this story for me was that, Camille and I have been friends for years, and we've talked about all the different times that you've been approached.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of what made Camille an expert in offline dating. Camille's been approached, I don't know how much more than your friends, but
hundreds of times.
like literally hundreds of times. So there's something to learn here. And one of the biggest things was being in a state that Camille calls being super social. There's actually things that you can do to get into the state. And when you're in a super social state, you get approached potentially hundreds of times. And that is very cool. So let's go right into it. Let's not waste any time. Let's talk about getting into a super social state.
So the first thing that I did to get into that state of being super social was to be confidently dressed. This was a while ago, but I had pinstripe pants on. I had a very fitted turtleneck. I had my laptop, pair of heels, and I just felt sexy, but not in a short dress, overly sexy cleavage way, but in a very put together way. So I just felt great about myself, and I felt like I belonged in New York in that moment.
I think this is so important, is that you actually feel great. There's a difference that I feel when I'm going to a special event or a wedding where I really have to dress up in a nice suit versus if I'm wearing, my Doberman Pinscher t-shirt. It's just a big face of a Doberman Pinscher that my kids always say, "Oh, Daddy, that's Rocky." It's our Doberman's name.
Yep.
But I just kind of feel like a suburban dad in the shirt. Like I don't really feel, cool. Like now I feel cool. I'm hanging out with the offline dating coach. I'm in like a cool little sport jacket that I wear a lot on the screen that we're probably gonna have to retire soon because I'm getting some comments.
It's about how it makes you feel, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I totally agree. So to that point, You were feeling awesome. You were feeling at the top of your game. And that's
Yes.
really important. And I hear all the time, well, shouldn't a man just love me for me? What do you say to that?
I mean, how the hell does he know who you are? You can't look at someone and know who they are. So a great way to communicate that, first off, is through clothes. Then you talk to them and learn more about them. But the first impression you give is visual.
What if I'm a t-shirt and jeans kind of a gal? I hear
Great.
that.
So am I on the weekends. But in that moment, I was in New York. I wanted to step it up. I wanted to feel really great about myself. I just come from a great meeting and I wanted to have that energy. And I can save my t-shirt and jeans for when I'm going to the grocery store, dry cleaners.
Okay. So to recap, the first tip is to what? Be confidently dressed?
Yeah.
Right.
Be dressed in a way that makes you feel how you want to feel. So if you're going out and being social that day, dress in a way that makes you feel social, that makes you feel good about yourself.
So you're confidently dressed, you're feeling good. That's the first step. The second step is
The second step is to get pumped up. So it could be hard to leave your house and having not talked to anyone all morning or all afternoon and all of a sudden try to talk to people, or try to interact with
it's
people.
jarring.
It
It
is.
can be jarring, yeah.
Yeah, especially I'm an introvert and I can be very shy sometimes too. And
Wait,
so,
you're an introvert?
absolutely, yes.
And you're a coach teaching offline dating?
Yeah, it's all about the meaningful connection. Introverts don't want to be around people just for the sake of being around people. They want quality connections,
Interesting.
more than extroverts who just kind of want to be around people. So yeah, so when you get pumped up, you can call a friend, you can listen to some music, just kind of get interacting with another human who maybe isn't in your presence.
That's a really good point, by the way. Listening to Lizzo, by the way, right before you go out. There's a good song, Good as Hell. That's a good one. My daughter really likes that. And also, you'd said talking to people. If you're at home and you've been there all day for 2 days and the only person you've talked to is, like a food delivery person, it's kind of hard to feel confident and in state. How do you actually start talking to people and getting in the groove?
Start small. Think of momentum. You wouldn't get on a spin bicycle and all of a sudden be going 60 miles an hour. You got to kind of work up to it a little bit, especially if you're an introvert. In my case, I had just come from a really good meeting with someone and we were developing something new that we were going to give to my company. So I just felt like I was in this great city, New York. I was talking business and getting things done, contributing to my company. I just felt great.
Okay, you were taking esteemable actions, you were being social. I actually used to do this as well. I would be so terrified to go out there and to compliment a woman that I would just start as I was walking down the street and I would just say, hello, as I was walking down the street. And I would then be like, oh, you just sounded so weird. I'd be very judgmental and harsh on myself because I was also very interested and had anxiety. But then I would push through and I would say hello to the next person and maybe someone would smile and say hi. And that gave me a little bit more confidence. And it was a very slow process until eventually I might have gotten in a conversation with someone and I would always leave it while it was still on a high.
That's awesome. That's perfect.
Yeah, and it was like the slow ladder, exactly what you're talking about. Makes so much sense.
Yeah, going from 0 to 60s in anything is really scary, so just work your way up to it. Just get into the flow.
So just to recap here, don't push yourself to immediately go and wink at a guy or approach a guy or wave at a guy. You actually might want to build up the momentum and build up the energy to start small until you're super social.
Yep, exactly. You got it.
Great. I'm learning. I'm figuring it out.
So one of the ways that I ramped up to get into the super social state was when I was walking down the street and there was a guy just standing there. I think he was waiting for someone and he was really cute and we were locking eyes. And so I just decided to break the sound barrier, as I call it, and say hi. Lo and behold, he said hi. We started chatting and I got a date with him.
Okay, so you never know. Even if you're ramping up and you just say hello, that could actually lead to a real connection.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Yeah, all connections start with one word or one sentence, so why not make it hi?
So when I was first learning how to do this, because I had so much anxiety, someone said to me, listen, don't worry about it. The first 1,000 times you walk up and say hello to a woman, it doesn't count. It doesn't count against you. And it was just such a ludicrous thing because I realized I was just being so judgmental to myself. And so just saying that kind of gave me permission to not put so much pressure on it. And just to realize that I'm just a dude who's going around and saying hello. It's not harmful. What's the worst that can happen?
Exactly. And when you actually do it, you find out that whatever you thought was the worst was going to happen will never happen.
For the most part.
It's never happened to me.
It's not going to happen. Now, the final part, I thought this was cool. When I used to work at Anthony Robbins and Associates back a long time ago, he used to say motion leads to emotion. And that was your third step about getting in a state was about your physicality, your motion. Tell me about that.
So, in the case of the story with Ugly Betty, I was walking down the street. I was physically moving my body. I wasn't kind of like getting into momentum like we just talked about for the second tip. And so when I stopped, I was watching in the crowd. I was still kind of like my body had been in movement. So I was feeling emotions, taking it in, being present in the moment. And I looked very relaxed and approachable as opposed to if I had just come out the door and hadn't been moving around all day, I might have looked a little bit uncomfortable. I hadn't gotten in my groove yet.
And that makes total sense, by the way. There's just something about being fluid, especially as a woman. There's something very feminine about a fluid, smooth way of walking and being.
Yep.
So, what are some of the ways that you kind of ramp up your physicality to be more maybe open and radiant?
I mean, walking is a great way, walking anywhere when we tend to be in motion, it gives our anxieties an outlet. So if you are feeling a little social anxiety when you're moving, you're giving that a way to process as opposed to standing stationary and bottling it all up, which I tried that too. That doesn't work very well. So I would say with that to literally open yourself up. I had a time I was on a train and I noticed this handsome guy getting on and the train was kind of empty. And so I purposefully put my arm up around the next seat and I was projecting open body language and I just relaxed into it because when you feel comfortable, like legit feel comfortable, not trying to force feel comfortable, you look comfortable. And that makes other people feel comfortable. When people feel comfortable, they want to come up to you.
Wow, so it's like a Jedi mind trick. It's like a Caesar Milan thing where you're just gonna
That's right.
literally, I mean, we are animals, so this does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
You're just gonna relax your body. How do you do that, by the way? How do you relax your body?
You breathe into it. I mean, it takes some practice. I, again, had social anxiety growing up. And so, when I first took the L train in Chicago, I was terrified. I was like, people are touching me. Oh my God. And then, a year later, I'm like pushing myself. I'm like, there's 2 inches of space and I'm pushing myself in there. You become desensitized to it.
I actually get these comments a lot because women from all over the world are watching, and this is probably more specific to a train in the United States, in maybe safer areas. This probably wouldn't work in other countries where there's maybe less security, and by having an open body language could be harmful. So just, a little caveat, we're sharing our own experience in our own country, but I promise you, we're actually going to be diving in deep into more international dating. I think that's going to be interesting. So stay tuned.
Great. I can really talk to that too, by the way.
Oh, why?
Because I've dated men from 6 continents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do another video on that.
Fine with me.
Okay. Should we have her back? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to know. So just to kind of wrap up here on the last point, are there any other ways that you use your physicality to make yourself more approachable to men?
Yeah, definitely. Eye contact is big. And this is, similar to getting into social momentum. You can work your way up to it. I used to be terrified of eye contact. It's very intimidating. I mean, if you think about a predator, it's on an instinctual level. It can be intimidating. Now I'm so good at eye contact, I have to remember to break it so that I don't make concern other people of like, oh my God, she's staring at me. So
She's still staring.
yes. So you can definitely work up to it, but just hold it a little bit longer than is comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You can smile, open body language like we talked about, relax into the moment. Pretend the people around you are friends so that you feel more comfortable. Pretend if you're sitting on a bus, pretend you're sitting in your living room. Tap into that same comfort and emotional state and, be aware of your surroundings. But really, it's just about being relaxed and looking like you're comfortable. If you look uncomfortable, you're going to make them feel uncomfortable. They won't come up to you.
All right. So we talked about becoming super social. We talked about dressing with confidence. We talked about getting pumped up. And we talked about exuding more openness and approachability with your physical body.
Yes.
So a question that I can imagine that we'll be getting, what is the hardest part of this whole thing? If you're coaching a woman to do this and you're seeing what she's doing, what's the one or two things that are stopping her from truly being approachable?
I would say it's actually being comfortable and not forcing it. If you're trying to feel comfortable, you're probably not comfortable. It's really just allowing and relaxing into the moment. There's just something where people can tell someone who looks uncomfortable. I'm sure you can tell when someone looks uncomfortable. And the last thing you want to do is go interact with that person. So I would say if you're trying or forcing anything, take a deep breath, put your shoulders down, and pretend you're in the middle of your living room and you're nice and comfortable.
So that's interesting because I think that there's fear and there's anxiety. That's probably a natural, normal emotion. That's probably your body's way and your brain's way of saying, warning, you might not be safe. And yet there's also times where that's just not true.
Yeah.
And it's just more of ourself being afraid because of past beliefs that are harmful. And so I guess a point here that I just want to make about what you said that I think is really profound is being willing to accept that maybe there's some beliefs that are unhelpful and maybe we have to push ourselves to feel discomfort so we can become more approachable and connected to other people. Because I can tell you, 10 years ago, I would be so nervous sitting here talking to you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here.
Too.
I am talking to a woman. This is terrifying. But obviously, as you get older, you have more interactions.
You've proven those fears wrong. Those fears don't come true the more you push it, but you have to prove that to yourself by taking action.
20 years ago, I would have been much more nervous sitting in front of a confident, successful woman talking about dating and relationships. That'd be terrifying to me. But obviously, with time, talking to women, living life, you start to learn that not everything we're afraid of is real. So I appreciate you saying that and kind of walking us through how you overcome this to be more approachable with kind of extraordinary results. When I first met Camille, we were both in Chicago. You were teaching classes, like live workshops, and I was teaching live workshops, and I had like 2 or 3 really great reviews. And I was pretty proud of that. You know, I'd done a few workshops, had 2 or 3 great reviews. Camille had hundreds of great reviews. And I was like, what is this? Who is this woman? Seriously. And so obviously, you know, you're someone who creates really stellar, effective content in helping women to meet more men offline.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So if you want to check out more of Camille actually, you just wrote a book, 3 books actually, and one of them is coming out very soon. So you're going to want to check out Camille at masterofflinedating.com or search Camille Virginia or Master Offline Dating on Facebook. Any other place that we can find you? Anything you want to share?
The book comes out September 2019. It's called The Offline Dating Method, How to Attract a Great Guy in the Real World.
Awesome. We will have more of Camille here. And maybe we can go somewhere and we can actually see this in action. Are you down to go out and pick up
Sure.
some guys?
I can, yes.
Okay. You heard it here. This was commitment. Okay. I would love to do that. That sounds like so much
Are you just
fun.
going to film me being open and approachable, and we'll kind of wait and see what happens, I guess?
Yeah.
Because you never know. You have to release the outcome, too, as part of it. Too.
I am committed to that. We just have to find out where that's not illegal. Seriously, if you know where we can film those kinds of videos, just comment below. Preferably someplace, you know, beautiful and warm. Because if we're going to travel,
Might as
you
well
know,
make it great.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Keep watching this channel. We're going to do all sorts of fun stuff related to dating, relationships, Camille picking up men. Check it out. And please, please, please hit the like button. Just smash the button. Hit the button as if it were your mean ex-boyfriend. Just hit that button because it helps this video be seen by more people. So, all right. Thanks again for coming, Camille.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks for
it.
having me, Jason.
All right. Be well.